So.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody. We got Dan McLaughlin, the CEO of NVAR, and Casey. I wanted to say Carrie, but I knew it wasn't right. Who is the chairman of the board with NVAR, right?
Yeah.
So they came to talk about NVAR and what they're doing and where these things go, and we appreciate you coming.
Absolutely.
So
Good to be here.
I'll hand it over and
Can they see us from here? So we should kind of like maybe face.
yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Why don't you guys sit there and I'm happy to.
There's all the camera, you can see on the camera.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then if I want to advance slides, just click on one of these buttons here.
Yeah, it should just be the down. Or just hit that. Should be able to sit on the mouse of the down button.
I'll try to stand over here so I
Yeah.
can play for us.
You can adjust.
Yeah, just adjust the slides.
Perfect.
But welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having us. Hope you can all see the slide deck here. So that's me, Ryan McLaughlin, your NVAR CEO. Happy to be here.
And I'm Casey Menish. I'm the 2025 board president at NVAR, and I'm a realtor like you guys. I'm a realtor at Pearson Smith Realty.
Good stuff. Well, we're here to, we appreciate the invitation. One of the things we like to do is get out into the field and see what's going on in your offices, seeing how we can be of support and help to you and the rest of your offices. Give some updates on what's happening in the association and also some market updates from our standpoint, what we're seeing how that compares to what you're seeing in the field, and then just take your questions and go from there. Does that sound good? All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
I see Jim Vincent on there.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Jim is an active volunteer leader with NVAR.
And is a recent graduate of the Leadership Institute.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Jim.
Thanks for being a part of this. All right, so we'll dig right in here. So just, don't like to take for granted that everybody knows who we are and what organization you're part of at NVAR. We've got probably I'd say about 12,500-ish members at this point. We've seen a little bit of softening in our membership over the past few years, as you can imagine, but still a really strong size association, one of the largest in the country. We've got 33 staff that are here to help you, and we've been around for 100 years. Since 1921, so we're really proud of that, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
moving ahead, strong here to service you in all of your regions. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So we revisit our mission every 3 years. We do a new strategic plan. This was refined last year when we did our most recent strategic plan. And our mission is to elevate realtor success by delivering exceptional value, driving innovation, and impacting the industry. We have a couple different goals and ways that we do that.
Yep.
So these are our strategic drivers, like I just mentioned: value, innovation, and impact. They're what we really strive when we make decisions at the board to be there for our members. When we make decisions to be there, how to support our members through what they're going through. These are kind of the 3 strategic drivers we have in mind when we make all of our decisions.
So with value, one of the things that we focus on is when you pay your dues, typically around August, September, fall, we want to make sure that you feel like you're getting a strong return on your investment. With that $295 to NVAR, and we recognize it's not just $295, you're also paying your Virginia Realtors dues and your National Association dues. But we want to make sure when you're writing that check, so to speak, you feel like you're getting a really strong return on your investment. We feel like we provide that. We'll highlight a couple of ways in which we do that. And innovation, as Casey mentioned, we're really trying to make sure that you're positioned for success in the future, whether that's bringing you high-level content, future-focused content, products, services that can help you in your business. And then with impact, a couple of ways that we have an impact on the industry is one, through advocacy, which I'll share a couple slides on that about some of our priorities that we're working on to protect your interests with local, state, and federal officials. The other is through the media. We try to serve as the voice for real estate in the region to try to cut through the noise. You've heard a lot of noise lately, I'm sure, about the DC marketplace and what's happening. We're trying to be a voice of reason for that and get the data out. But we do that all the time, not just when the media is looking for time. And also community service, we have a very active member cares committee, we chaired that committee a couple of years ago, and we get members involved that way.
I do, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was trying to see if Ken had a question or just, was maybe.
Somebody's gonna
Can
mute.
everybody
mute their computer?
Awesome. So, yeah, so a big thing, something that's very important to us, and I feel like really started in COVID when, you know, we had to figure out new ways to meet our members where they are, and they were either at home or just not coming into the office anymore. We really wanted to focus on figuring out where our members live, work, and I think recreate was the other way we described it, you know, where do you spend your life? And we did a search a few years ago, or we did some research a few years ago, and we basically found out that approximately 2,000 of that 12,500-ish of our members live in Loudoun County. And so, you know, some of you may be familiar with the Herman office that we had before. We closed that down a little over a year ago. And we made the decision to move into Loudoun County, which is where a lot of our members live and even more of them work and, you know, sell real estate. So we're very excited that our One Loudoun office is going to be opening in June 1st is the target. So that'll be awesome. We hope you'll all come check it out there. And then potentially looking to expand into Gainesville as well, because we have a really large subset of our membership that lives in Prince William County.
Yeah. You have an office in Ashburn, I understand.
Could you-
Right? Where in Ashburn is it?
Ashburn Road, jump out where the WO. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The barbecue spot is what most people
Yeah.
know.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's what you're talking about. Exactly up against the trail. Yeah, so you know where One Loudoun is. So we're pretty excited about that. It's gonna be a big move for us, be able to service our members, Western Fairfax members, plus our entire Loudoun membership. Have any of you done a transaction in Loudoun or planning to do a transaction in Loudoun?
Oh, yeah.
You know, or I've seen movement into Loudoun.
Yeah.
So we see the pattern, as Casey mentioned, we did that study, we saw the pattern. It's starting to expand, and we want to be there to meet you where you are. Very exciting news, looking forward to that in the future. I want to highlight a couple of member benefits for you, just so you get a good understanding of how you take advantage of your membership. So, one is, we would call it sort of industry-leading professional development with NVAR for a realtor school. Do you want to mention about continuing education?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, we made the move to make continuing education complimentary. So, you know, essentially it's a part of what you pay for with your dues. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't learn nearly as much when I'm just trying to like crank out, do the quiz online, get through the continuing education. We want people to come in and engage and actually learn something out of their continuing education. So we have tons and tons of classes, and you can find them if you don't already have the NVAR app. Highly recommend downloading that. Because you can scroll through and see when we offer all the different CE courses that are complimentary as part of your dues.
It was a big investment that the board made a few years ago, especially when things were starting to shift in the marketplace. We know that business was becoming a little bit more difficult for you, and professionalism is something that's really important to us, and we know to all of you, so we want to make that investment. So a big benefit of being a member of NVAR, in all of your continuing education. We also do several hundred events a year. Forum events, programs on different topics, not just CE, so beyond just the basic continuing education. The other thing is industry insights. I mentioned about market data. We have a partnership with George Mason University, where we do a real estate and regional forecast for the region. Have you ever seen that forecast report that we've done?
I did,
Okay.
and you know, it was really good when it was written, but the market is. An update.
Yeah.
We are going to do an update.
Okay.
Yes.
We typically do one halfway through the year, regardless, because a lot of things happen. But in this case, we may not do an adjustment to the forecast, but we're gonna do a deeper dive into the data soon with Dr. Flower, because a lot has changed since we love that. We'll release it, for sure.
Yeah.
We also provide monthly market stats. Do you see those stats when they come out? The press release we sent out with the narratives of the market. Not only do we do a regular market update, but then we also do a comparison to the national marketplace. So earlier in the month, and this week, you'll see the regular market update that we provide about what's happening in Northern Virginia. And then a little bit later in the month, in about 2 weeks, we'll do that same analysis, but we'll compare it to how the national market's performing. So you can get a sense of how are we doing that compared to nationally, because a lot of your clients, we know, read national headlines, this gives you a narrative, an ability to kind of distinguish our marketplace from the national. Sometimes it's a better story, sometimes it's not a better story, but at least you have the facts and you can help provide that
So
resource.
where is that on your website?
It would be under NVAR.com/market stats, or if you're on our website, there's a, I want to say it's news, resources tab,
Mhm.
you just drop down there.
Okay.
And on the app, it's one of the, kind of like across the top, market statistics is one of the top blue things that you can click on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's actually go to that, so we highlight the slide, or, because you've mentioned the app a few times, you want to talk a little more about the app, and you can actually download it now if you want to, just take a screenshot, or just go to NVAR.com/app.
Yeah, so we just launched this app earlier this year. We're really excited about it. It's been a long time coming and we're happy to launch it to you all. My favorite personal part of it is how simple it is to register for classes. I don't have to go in and fill in my work address and fill all this in. You know, it truly takes maybe 2 seconds to register for a class, which I love. And it reminds you that you're registered. So you don't have to think, wait, do I need to go back and register a second or a third time? And it highlights all of the different classes that we have coming up and events put on by our various committees that are coming up. It has our market statistics. It has, you can shop the realtor store on the app. You can access the legal hotline. There's just so many benefits that you can access in the palm of your hand. It's part of that kind of meeting our members where they are.
Has anybody downloaded the app yet? Just curious, I see Jim nodding.
See Jim.
Alright, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yes, awesome, I saw you take a screenshot. Good.
So, tell me those of us that are John, members, I'm here.
We can't talk to you, so.
Yeah.
I'm here to learn more about the comparisons on what you guys do have with better ministry.
Yeah.
So,
Well, are you an NVAR member also, or no?
No.
Okay, we'd love to have you join. If you join, you can get access to the app and a bunch of other stuff.
I don't mean to monopolize you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just in the course of the
Yes.
presentation.
There is a distinction, and we respect our neighboring associations. They're all doing what they can with the resources they have. But from our standpoint, we think it's pretty clear that we've got a higher level of value that we can provide the return of investment for the amount of dues that you're gonna pay. The app is just an example, but continuing education complimentary is another example, access to the legal hotline. We're the ones that develop the standard forms that everyone's using in the region. So as a resource, I mean, there's, there's
Robust events and networking opportunities.
the convention is top notch, best in class for the region. I don't know if you went last year when we had it at Capital One Hall. Did you go, anybody go to that? Oh, Jim went.
Jim went.
Jim, how was it, Jim? All right.
You're muted.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah, you're muted.
You're muted.
Still maybe.
Are they gonna continue to host it at the Capital? Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah, so I love the new venue. The new venue was awesome. It seemed like it was much easier to interact with the vendors. And get a lot of good information. That's what we do in this business, right? Is we collect information. And the presentations were pretty cool. Yeah, I like the new venue. I'm looking forward to it again this year.
It is complimentary. It may not stay that way forever, but it was complimentary last year and it has been for a long time. So we'd love to talk more about your DAR membership if you'd like to offline and the value there. Anything else want to add to that?
That's about it. And just, it's a great app now, but it's gonna become more and more robust with time. We're just kind of in phase 1, so look forward to phase 2 with new features.
Yeah, being in one line, I think, and having that presence is gonna make it a lot easier for those, not just our NVR members, but DAR members who want access to a realty store, a class, a digital experience center to record podcasts, video, audio, interacting, networking, a place to meet clients. It's gonna be a great place for that. Okay, anything on member benefits that we missed or you want to touch on or that people have questions on?
I mean, I think I briefly mentioned the legal hotline is on the app. If you haven't used that, that is a tremendous resource that we offer to our members. Obviously go to your broker for a lot of these questions, but sometimes there are such niche, unique questions that even your broker might want to reach out to the legal hotline and get a second opinion. I feel like I call them once a week. I use the legal hotline constantly, so take advantage of that.
Good.
That's a complimentary resource.
Hey, Ryan, it's Jim Benson. I just want to say to everybody also, when you use the legal hotline, the first thing we do at the forms committee meeting every month is we start with an update from the hotline so that we know what's coming in from the agents. It's one of the things I love about that committee is we're proactive. Whereas most of the other committees might be reactive, we're proactive, and so if you have something, and just call a hotline, leave a recording, because we hear it. We hear it.
And FYI, the brokers also use the hotline quite a bit.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be a sounding board, it can be a validation of your thoughts, it can be a help change your mind on things. But that's a great point, Jim. That's one of the other values that we don't really talk about the legal hotline is not only are we helping individual agents and brokers, but we're compiling, we're aggregating that information. What are the trends and the issues that we're seeing? And they're using that to inform groups like the Standard Forms Committee or a professional ethics and advisory group to put on certain content. If we see a trend that, there's, I don't know, some sort of issue with transactions, they can focus in on that. So it's a really good tool. Good point, Jim. All right, so we want to give a brief market update and see how this tracks with what you're hearing, what you're seeing and experiencing in the field. Well, let's start with 2024, just to kind of wrap up how we did. Last year, the market performed, I think, better than we expected. Sales were up about 2.5% overall, with the median price up over 7% to 729,000. The month supply of inventory was up to 1.3 months. So that's for us, that's good in terms of moving in the right direction. It's still really tight and constrained compared to normal marketplaces. But in my experience, so especially those that have been doing business here longer, this is pretty normal for our region. It's pretty low inventory month supply. And then average days in the market, homes were moving quicker last year, which was pretty good. So we did outperform the national marketplace. From a 2025 perspective, we're seeing we were expecting generally positive trends for 2025. More inventory to the market, more listings. Prices are going to continue to rise. Sales might be a bit flat, but sales volume and the rest to go up. So do you want to add anything on 2024? Okay. So here's where we are, fresh, hot off the press. This data just came out yesterday. Yeah, the 10th it came out, so we haven't even really released it yet.
What do you guys consider the NVAR region?
So Arlington, I think for this purposes, it's Arlington County, Fairfax County, City of Falls Church, City of Fairfax, basically all the City of Alexandria, everything within kind of Fairfax County and Arlington County.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah, that's what this shows. Our forecast, however, also includes Loudoun, Prince William, and Stafford. Because of the trend that we've seen of our members doing business in other marketplaces, they're doing listings in those footprints, they're following buyers there. We wanted to make sure they had the resources for that. Okay, so what did we see in February? Sales were actually down a bit, 8%. The median price was up. Month supply of inventory is at 1.1 months, which is up over January. Average days on market was was the same as last month, 22 days in the market. Pending sales were down about 8%. Inventory increased about 30%, which is a pretty big number compared to February. And sales volume, total sales volume down about 9%. You would expect with less home sales, the volume being down. And the number of new listings actually down about 3.8%. So I'm curious your take. How does that track with what you experienced in February, either individually or as an office? Were your sales down in February? Are you seeing the opposite of that? Were things moving stronger?
What's the 1520? The number is that.
That's that's inventory. So the number
That's an increase of 31%.
Yeah. I was curious about that too.
I'm not feeling that.
Yeah.
Well, I do see more inventory, but I'm curious, so this is this February to last February.
Yes, correct.
This is not comparing it to December or January.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, to me, we won't know for a while whether that's because of the cold January
Right.
or whether the increase in inventory is from a unease and it's kind of out of town,
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
But I've definitely seen more inventory in Fairfax County.
Yeah, I think Kathy's on it there. That the spring market definitely was later this year. I think we're just now beginning to see the spring market, whereas historically the last few years, it's been in the middle of February. And for some reason this year, it's taken longer to pick up some momentum. So I'll be excited to see the February and March numbers, because I think we're just now beginning to see that wave start to come in.
For my clients, it was just, it's too cold, I want the yard to look better.
Yeah,
So we've had these listings we've been sitting on, that
Yeah.
still haven't hit the market,
yeah.
because everybody's waiting for things to look nicer.
Yeah, we heard that, I mean, the weather is a factor, January was really cold, and so there's some spillover through February. Yeah. Well, that's what we're seeing right now, we're trying to really pull the story out of the data as we put it out there to the marketplace. Trying to clear to understand the difference between the housing, why the housing inventory is up so much. You know, is that carryover from February of houses that didn't sell or from January that didn't sell in February. Plus, you know, but then you have new listings down. And, you know, the narrative in the DC area has been, oh, you know, inventory, new listings are skyrocketing because, you know, federal government workers, et cetera. But that doesn't tell that story in any way. So I'm trying to put that all together for you. Welcome your insights. Do you have any thoughts? I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that, Lisa Stewart,
Yeah.
she does some surveys
Yes.
to try to gather that information, and try to figure out why people think things are happening, and I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're gonna start doing weekly, or they have started doing weekly updates as well, to kind of be a little bit more up to date than a monthly update.
Yeah, there's it's brightmls.com/DC tracker. Or just Google Bright MLS DC tracker, and it'll come right up. It's weekly stats. I was just glancing at it before I walked in here. And it's kind of hard to, with a week by week,
Yeah,
it fluctuates so much.
Yeah.
One week you'll see a spike in inventory compared to the year prior, the same week the year prior. This week, it's like specifically in Arlington and Alexandria, it's inventory levels, new listings are down. You can't really, it's hard to tell a story, but at least it's data, it's the facts versus some of that social media stuff that's been out there.
yeah.
Yeah, just another shameless plug for the app. If you go to the app to the home page and you look at market stats, I'm looking at it right now. It has those same numbers you just had up, Ryan, but it also breaks it down by the NVAR region, Fairfax County, Fairfax City, Falls Church, Arlington, Alexandria. It gives you better numbers because we all know as soon as somebody finds out we're a realtor, their first question is, well, how's the market? If you're popping your app open every morning and you're skimming through these numbers, you know the answer to that question right away. You become more professional and more serious about the fact that you are a realtor and it's not just a hobby.
Thanks for that plug again, Jim. So by the time we leave here, everyone will have downloaded the NVAR. Right? Appreciate it. I mentioned about the Center for Regional Analysis, which is George Mason University's basically economic research arm. And so for the forecast, check it out when you get a chance. You can see the full forecast. We break it down by Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax. We also do Loudoun, we do Prince William, we do Stafford. And we're looking at, in each of those segments, I'm not gonna be able to recite them all to you, the data, but we break down single family, townhome, and condo projections, sales price, number of sales, and inventory levels. So it's a lot of good data. Please take a look at it when you get a chance, and we're gonna be revisiting that.
Yeah, because again, like, you know, some clients think they know a lot because they read national news,
Right.
and so trying to tease out for them what's happening locally versus Florida, you know, is really important.
Right.
So getting that analysis, giving a little interim update would be very helpful.
Yeah, it's good feedback. All right, well, let's go through a couple of advocacy updates. One of the benefits that you get with being a member is we're representing your interests on behalf of the industry. So we have a couple of things we'll share high level, but welcome you and bring in Josh Rivera, who's our government affairs director, or the chair of our public policy committee, which this year is
Ava.
Nguyen. She can come and visit with you to talk a little more specifically about the wins and things like that. So the Virginia General Assembly session is up. And there were several issues that the realtors were tracking, the Virginia Association of Realtors with our support. One requiring a signed buyer representation agreement prior to showing homes. This was a requirement as a result of the lawsuit for realtors. This now levels the playing field, so all licensees have to have a buyer representation agreement shown or a signed prior. Increasing requirements to get on the Virginia Real Estate Board, adding disclosures on common interest community insurance deductibles to the resale certificate. Eliminating real estate license transfer fees within your brokerage. I didn't know that was a thing, but
Yeah.
maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, so basically, if you're, I think it was something like if you're changing offices within the same brokerage, you shouldn't have to pay the fee to change within your same brokerage, I think is what that was.
Right. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe you're, managing brokers, you have experience with that, hopefully that's where it solves one of your issues. Then the other thing we're hearing a lot about is deed fraud. Are you hearing about deed fraud? Have you experienced it? You know, a client that's experienced it?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen like a land
Yeah.
scam, somebody says, I'm trying to sell this plot of land,
Yeah.
and then, yeah. So I think the original intention of the goal was they wanted to introduce some sort of legislation to help these settlement agents, title companies, stop that in its tracks. And I think it turned into doing a study to figure out what's the best practices, how to go about doing that, so that we don't have as much deed fraud.
Yeah, typically what happens when there's an advisory group, something like this created, it's typically because there's not a consensus on how to solve the problem yet. Right. It's just too soon, so they put together a work group to try and resolve it within the next year. So there's other victories on the national level and the regional level. I don't think I have here, but two other things to point out. One of the things that the government affairs team does is stop bad things from happening, which maybe you don't ever hear about, but these were two that they wanted us to point out. Lobbying against rent control. There was some efforts to regulate rent control in Virginia. And the other was on short-term rentals, opposing legislation on short-term rental registrations and restrictions on selling homes to specific companies as it violated property rights. A couple issues. Anybody following any of those issues, rent control, you hearing about that? Or short-term rentals?
Success.
Problem solved. Wasn't there.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple more things here that might be of interest to you. So this is new, in case you've added this since.
Yeah,
the
I
last
don't know,
time.
that's fine.
So NAR does a profile of home buyers and sellers. Have you ever seen that report?
No.
Okay, you should, I believe you have access to it as a member of NAR. It might be a small fee to download the report. But I want to give you some highlights because they're kind of interesting to follow. We'll start with the home buyers and then we'll start with the sellers. Number of stats here, you can keep the slide deck and refer to it later. And we'll just go through this again and tell me if anything stands out to you as, kind of unexpected. So demographics. The median age of a buyer is at an all-time high, 56 years old, up from 49 in 2023. The majority of home buyers are married, 62%. For first-time home buyers, the median age is up to 38, up from 35 in 2023. And first-time home buyers make up about 24% of the marketplace. Does that surprise anybody? Any of those stats?
38 does, but is this taken from Lisa's presentation last week at the Economic Summit?
No,
This is
Presentation.
So national.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
national.
Which economic summit did she do?
The dark.
Okay, yeah, so no, this would have been, the national, this is from Lawrence Yoon and the National Association of Realtors.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, so that sounded strange to me, but then I asked, like, what defines a first time buyer,
mhm,
you know, on that? And they said anybody who hasn't bought real estate in the last 3 years.
mhm.
So the definition of what a real buyer is there, I think it's important.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting, I didn't realize that was the definition. It doesn't seem like a big.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it sounds off there.
So.
Or maybe it's hasn't owned their primary residence in 3 years, like maybe they've been renting for 3 years, and now they're.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, all right, well, we'll dig into that, that's a good point, we'll try to find out a little more, maybe we can put an asterisk there and just clarify.
But you're right, that might be for like lending purposes, like a first time home buyer program, and it, not really your first time ever buying a
Mhm.
property, but in the eyes of the lender. or
Who
the typical
who answered
lenders.
that question, was it Lisa, or was it someone else?
It was I thought Lisa that way in.
Okay, they had it both in there. All right, we'll find out. Good point. Good distinction.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was Lisa.
Seems like a simple thing. to
All right.
find.
Right.
Either home for it or you did.
Or not, yeah.
Is this based on survey information? Yeah, it would be surveys.
Yeah, so again, I think there's a little like asterisks that should be there because you know.
Yeah.
Are people being honest or are people just willy-nilly from our survey?
Yeah, I trust what they put out, because NVAR is like the authoritative voice on this, when they do this research, they're, you know, filtering and they've got methodologies, they're the leading authority on it, so I would trust the data they're putting out, may not be like exactly precise.
Yeah.
Probably true. The other one, working with professionals, 88% of home purchasers were made through a real estate agent. And also, you see the next slide, only for sellers, only 6% were for sale by owner. It's a record low. Most home buyers work with an agent. 80% of first-time home buyers said their agent's work assistance was valuable. And then the reasons to buy a home, the desire to own a home is to the number one reason. And here's the seller side. Average age of a seller, highest ever recorded, 63 years old. Married couple selling was 69%. 77% of the homes sold did not have children under 18. The median number of years a seller owned a home was 10. That's a number that's coming up.
Yeah.
What are your reactions to that? Is that consistent with your experiences? This is
Yeah,
national-
we call that the silver tsunami, and if you guys aren't marketing that age bracket, which is me, you're missing out on a lot of sales.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that 10 years is a reflection of the lock-in rate. People that otherwise would have moved have made their house work for them for a longer period.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And in my experience, that third bullet about children under the age of
Mhm.
18, a lot of people are attracted to stay here for the schools.
Mhm.
And as soon as they raise their kids, they are out.
Yeah.
And that's been my big, experience the last few years.
Mhm.
They love it here, but it's too expensive, so once the kids are done,
Yeah.
schools.
They go to where the kids land. Yeah.
Or just to Carolinas and
Yeah.
a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Interesting. Or this is another huge statistic. 90% of sellers sold a home with assistance of a real estate agent. 6% were FISBO. That's an all-time low. So that I've not seen that number change. The 90%, the lowest I've seen in 15 or 20 years I've been in this industry has been like 85%. I've never seen it lower than that.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's going up, you know, all these concerns about, oh, you know, consumers are gonna go it alone, it just doesn't match the reality of what's happening in the marketplace. Could it change? Do we keep our eye on it? Of course. There's all these different businesses, models, and different technologies popping up. 66% of sellers use an agent that was referred to them or they had previously worked with. Are you all getting business from referrals? Is that a key part of where you get your business? Nearly 2/3 of sellers have recommended their agent to at least once since selling their home. That's huge.
Yeah.
You don't take advantage of that? Getting your sellers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most cited reasons to sell a home with closer friends and family. With 52% of sellers purchased a newer home than their previous home.
Oh,
That's kind of interesting.
yeah.
I don't know, does that track with your experiences? Does this stuff track with your experiences? Well, you can keep these slides, look through them, you know, there's a story in here, I'm trying to figure all that out, that's what I like to hear from all of you, and we get good insights from leaders like Casey and the board. All right. So we'll touch on a couple of trends that are happening in the marketplace and then take your questions if you have any along the way. And this is outdated, but I just want to give you an example of, so this slide's gonna be coming out here soon. How we had to react about a month ago. When, did you all see the meme that was going around, that graphic?
Flooding market, yeah.
So I got that text on Sunday from, I think it was Michelle, or, and one of our members said, like, hey, this is going viral, we should react to this. And typically we're like, you know, if we see stuff like, oh, you gotta weigh the pros and cons, it's really something, had 11 million hits on it. And like, rallied the leadership team, rallied Lisa Sturtevant at Bright and Terry Flower at GMU. We said, well, let's cut through the noise, let's look at the data. And what we found was basically, it was unfounded. It was 2 weeks of explosion in inventory was unfounded. Now, that's that 2 week period. Things are gonna change.
Yeah.
Since then, Bright has now started this DC tracker every week. We're watching it, we're seeing what stories emerge. there's likely gonna be an impact from the DC federal government workforce changes. Whether it's the work from home mandates, whether there's departments that close up, whether, you know, there's downsizing in the federal government workforce. Someone shared a statistic, I almost like don't want to repeat it because it's not been validated, but something like for every one federal government employee, there's 2 federal government contractors that are affected. So,
Yeah.
so I'm curious what you're seeing out there. What is we're hearing a lot more anecdotes from realtors saying my client has a spouse that's a federal government employee, they took the deal and they're looking to move on and move out of here, or, you know, they got laid off, or I've gotten laid off. It's stuff like that. Are you hearing? What are you hearing? I mean, you're right here in Falls Church, and we're right here. Imagine a lot of your clients.
I think a lot of those federal government statistics are for the DC region, so then you get PG County, Montgomery County, how far is the DC region, and how much of that lands here in Nova, you know, and the closer you are in, obvious district, there's a higher preference of federal governments. The further you get out, it's gonna be less impact, you know, because those residences made a move specifically to get away from the black place. They didn't need to get down to DC, you know, and it worked for them from a lifestyle standpoint. So people that work heavily in closer right now can see more of that impact.
Yeah, I'm seeing it at the lowest price point. The condos for under 500,000. That's my listing there has been sitting. I had another young worker who was gonna buy this spring, who said, I haven't lost my job, but I'm gonna rent. And so we're seeing like 2 or 3 of those calls since January. And good buyers qualified who aren't gonna buy and a good deal sale, it's not moving. So haven't seen like the mid-range yet. In Arlington, we're still seeing that anything between 700 and 1.7 is still selling pretty quickly. So,
Yeah, I think one of my key takeaways from that video that you did with Dr. Lisa Sturdivant is kind of towards the end of it. She says, you know, people have an incredible amount of equity in their homes. So these aren't going to be snap decisions where they lose their job and tomorrow they list their house on the market. This is going to be a gradual thing that's going to happen over the next, 6 months or so. And we also did an interview, which I don't think we put out yet, but I did an interview with one of our local lenders, and they were basically saying, you know, people have options. They can take out a HELOC. They have access to their equity, and they don't have to drop everything and sell their house. So I don't think it's quite as, immediate as maybe the news would make it seem, but I agree with you that the uncertainty, even if they haven't lost their job yet, the uncertainty is causing buyers to, take a step back.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what this does to the rental market
Yeah,
and the HELOC.
yeah,
Yeah, Casey, I think you're right on there. I don't think it's impacted the market the way the so-called experts who have never sold a property in their entire lives say it has. But I do think it contributed to the slowing of our spring market because of the uncertainty. So these people aren't, you're right, Casey, they're not desperate. They're taking a 7-month buyout. They're not moving. They're going to find a new job. So most of them are going to stay in this area, but there will be some trickle down, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the impact that the doomsayers claim it's going to be.
To your point about like some of the details, do check out the DC tracker, because not only she's breaking it down by what she defines as the DC metro area, which is not just the Northern Virginia communities, it's also parts of Maryland, DC, the DMV-ish, what they call the DC region. So check it out if you're curious about each market. The other thing is she does a narrative, just like 3 or 4 bullet point summary of here's what she sees from that data. And she pointed out 2 counties in Maryland today that she said we should keep an eye on, that have a high concentration of federal government employees, and we saw a big spike in active listings. So it's just good resource for you. So you basically, from our standpoint, we just want to help you get the information. So you can you can tell the facts to your clients as opposed to what the headlines drive it.
And I did reach out to NVAR as soon as that crazy viral meme came out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
somebody said, oh, go right to this article. And so I put it on LinkedIn and, you know, got out to my people like,
Nice.
hey, give me a call, it's okay.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful.
Great.
Oh, great.
Good, we'll try to do more of that. We did a video with Lisa, Casey did a video with a lender, and we do something with Terry Flower. I did more of that. So these are kind of the trends that we're seeing, you know, things we've just mentioned, low inventory, we're seeing rising prices. The regional economy, that's really tied to the federal government workforce stuff and how that's all going to play out. We're keeping an eye on that. You know, it's a concern. The economic competitiveness of the region is another concern that business leaders are looking at. You know, if cost of housing continues to go up, you know, if we're still dealing with inflation, you know, if the job market, while there's job availability is modest, we just need to keep our eye on that as a region and see how we can work together to keep this region competitive and strong. So it's something we're following. Oh, this is, yeah, I could probably skip this. We were gonna try and show some interesting data about showing activity, but I think we'll skip that for today. But I think that really wraps it up. Casey, is there anything we missed or you wanna make sure we?
Yeah, I think that's about it. NVAR app is obviously my big thing that I'm pushing to everyone. But yeah, would love to have you all get involved in NVAR if you're not already, you know, serve on our committees, come to our events. Reach out with feedback, we appreciate that, or use our resources. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
I have a question
Yeah.
about Tyson's.
Mhm.
And if you all are following, you know, the economic, all the new housing going in, there was news about that recently, and most of it's rental, I think. And about, the casino, and just wondering if you guys are tracking that, and to take a position one way or the other. What's going on with Tyson's?
Well, I was gonna say that bill got shut down, I think this legislative session, I don't know what the future of it is, but I think it got stopped, right? And NVAR hasn't taken a decision on that. Yeah, but the question about like multifamily housing, I don't know that we track.
Yeah, I'd say generally, you know, we're trying to push for owner occupied housing. You know, shelter and housing is good for everybody and more housing availability is good, but we're really trying to push for owner occupied housing. There's these new developments or new projects coming on. The challenge we're finding that we hear is it's the cost. You know, the cost, the return on investment for a developer is much, you know, more challenging when it's owner occupied.
Yeah.
But, you know, so we have limited things we can do on it, but we're aware of it. Do you have something specific?
Well,
you're thinking about?
well, like in Arlington with, the Amazon buzz, right? I was asking one of the builders there, like, why are there no new condo buildings going in down there? And he said exactly what you said. Profit margin for condos is not there as much as it is for rentals. And even in the orange line of Arlington, where there was a concerted effort, smart growth over the years to densify, and it was many condos, not just rentals. They're all mostly rentals now. They're not that highly owner occupied. And so I just am cautious that, like, we keep creating these communities that are high rental communities. And then there's nowhere for them to go on a path to home ownership. And like with the missing middle thing, it was incredibly unhelpful that the NVAR and others were supporting sixplexes, which were all rentals. You know, if that whole missing middle could have gone through if it stuck to duplexes and triplexes, which were ownership opportunities. Because they'd be the right scale for those single family home neighborhoods they were coming into. They're more affordable, but what we saw before the lawsuit shut down the missing middle was that the builders were putting in sixplexes heavily. And so we would really like to see NVAR step in and not support more rentals in these places that need more home ownership opportunities.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has been preordained by the developers and the deals that they've struck with the counties or that local jurisdiction that calls for that density, that, you know, ability to get people easily to a metro stop and out to work, whether it's east, west, or north or south. And counties are driving that, don't you think? That they want,
They just want
more
people.
housing.
Yeah, they just want
housing.
people.
Yeah, they don't
More
care
tax
whether
base.
or not it's rental or if it's ownership.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, you know, watch what you ask for. Arlington is more than 50% renters now. And that's by design, to get that density, but it didn't, it wasn't well thought out. And I see Tyson's going the same way when I just heard in the news last week, you know, how many thousands of new rental units are going in.
Well, and even all of the, on the Silver Line, where PSR has, you know, their headquarters, there's, it's an ownership opportunity within walking distance of the metro stops. You've got to rent. So if you want that convenience.
Yeah, I think that is a big societal question of, do we want to be a rentership society or a homeownership society? I think from our standpoint, we want to have a homeownership society, with a balance to all of it. I mean, there's housing, we want to make housing available, people need a place to live. There's affordability factor, your point about the metro, that's a big push, is to make sure, is to create density near the metro centers. And it sounds like rentals are what makes money. It's availability. So I don't have an answer, but it'd be a good question to pose to our public policy committee and our team. To
I
say
think
that.
it gives a better return on investment for those developers, taking on the actual expense of designing and building these, you know, elaborate residences above and commercial space below that blend. But, yeah, it's a different lifestyle.
I just wanted to pitch, I don't know the exact date, but we have a public policy roundtable coming up, and that would be a great thing to attend. Because it's basically, we get a bunch of our members in one room and we talk about what's going on that's working for you, that's not working for you, that we can potentially change with public policy. And that's what helps us guide the kind of legislative policy proposals that we pitch to Virginia realtors. So that would be a great thing to attend. I think it's later in March
Just looking at-
or early April maybe, but yeah.
It is March 24th, and you can register through the app.
Yeah.
Very easy. Very simple.
But yeah, I'll be there.
March 24th, we'd encourage you to come. It's from 2 to 3:30 p.m.
Any questions out there in Zoom land?
No, I just want to, and I promise Ryan has not paid me to say this, or Casey, but I want to encourage you guys to look. We don't know what's going on with NAR and VAR, and we don't hear from them often. But I can tell you that NVAR is not going anywhere. NVAR is engaged with its members, and it only becomes better the more of you that engage with it. And I know we're all busy, and I know this industry is work again. We can't just stick a sign in the front yard and eat bonbons till it sells. It's work. But I know we all have time to give to the association, and it only gets better with the more of you that get involved. So I just want to encourage everybody, believe me, there's a committee that addresses your interest. Find something, get engaged, come to these groups, these advisory groups, like Ryan was just talking about. I just want to encourage you guys to engage, because I feel like I didn't engage the first 8 years I was a realtor, and I really feel like I missed out. I had no idea. And so if you're saying to yourself, what's in it for me? Why am I paying my dues? Then you're not engaged. And I would challenge you to get engaged and still be able to ask that question in a year.
I could throw a controversial topic out, but, you know, and maybe I'll just leave after that. Office exclusives, and clear cooperation. Just trying to get a pulse on, you know, your thoughts, if you have a thought, if you're not following it, if it doesn't mean anything to you. But we're starting to see a rise in office exclusives, and also concerned about whether or not to put a listing in the MLS when it's, you know, when it's either an office exclusive or when it's at all, even at all. So is anybody following this issue closely?
The CEO of Compass came out and said that it was one of his goals to have Compass sell more in-house listings as an exclusive. So, I mean, that's been part of their philosophy from the beginning, that the really good agents should make all the money, you know, and that's something that they're shooting to do. But it sounds like kind of a lawsuit pending to happen. You know, if people really feel like they're having an impact on the market overall.
Well, I mean, because the issue is, if they do all office exclusives, is that a fair housing violation? Are they leaving people out of the opportunity to buy that house? And so, you know, if that's what they can do to convince their sellers, that's in their sellers' best interest, if they're good salespeople on selling their product, but if, to me, it doesn't sound fair. It doesn't, I would hope that the MLS would fight it, but, you know,
Doesn't really seem to be representing your client well.
Unless there's some real extenuating circumstances.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, we've all had that.
Right.
To get the one.
Yeah.
Very small.
Once in my career, I had a client where it's like, he needed office exclusive, but everyone else.
Yeah.
It's been in their best interest to get as much competition as possible.
yeah,
We have the state sale.
A buyer agent, right? Say if you're a buyer agent and in this competitive market, someone has an office exclusive at it, now you can have a more individualized deal within someone in your brokerage that you know will represent their client well. You know that somebody in your brokerage will represent their client well. And now you can sort of transact without having that competition. How do you do it from a buyer agent standpoint compared to a seller's agent standpoint? You know what I'm saying? Because like a seller's agent, you want as much competition to get the home sold for the most money, but as a buyer's agent, if you can find something that's exactly what your client's looking for and help your client out. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like there's like, part of me is like my selling agent mindset and then my buyer agent trying to represent my buyers. It's like, oh, it'd be nice to have something in-house that I can get my client to, you know, because say if you go and you put in 10 contracts, you don't get them.
Yeah.
This could be, you know, like the one.
Yeah, take advantage of it, if you're the buyer's agent,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
I don't know if they're getting the best deal.
I'm saying there's like two sides to it, you know,
Totally.
you would wish there was in-house, but then as a selling agent, you'd rather put it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn more about that, you know, that side of it. As a buyer agent, how is that, you're saying that basically working with an agent within your brokerage will make the transaction more seamless? And you could possibly get a better deal for your buyer agent, buyer?
But you
Potentially.
just might have less competition, because you're not
Less
competing against
competition.
the full
Right.
buyer pool.
And if it's like, say if it's a deal, because I've seen, in my experience recently, like I'm working with a buyer and, like I've seen a lot of recent properties, like, in my opinion, the market's really hot. Like things are selling really quickly and they're going under contract in 3 days. But then I'll follow up with what they closed at and they only sold 5 or 10 over asking with multiple offers. So sometimes it's just accepting an offer that makes sense for the seller right away. Okay, so say if the seller has a tight timeline of like, hey, I need to sell this and then, you know, get into my new home construction or buying a new home right away, they put a like a short timeline. It may be in their best interest to do a, you know, an office exclusive to where someone has a buyer that will bring a solid deal that will close in say 21 days, get the deal done. And keep going rather than testing the market, have a negotiator. You know,
So that's being driven by the seller instructing you to do that
yeah,
versus
essentially.
an agent saying, this is the best thing you should do is keep it in my office.
well.
Yeah,
versus
it would be up to the
versus-
seller as to, but I think it would be like conditional. If they don't have like a strict timeline, they just wanna get the most money,
Yeah.
it would be smartest to list it.
Yeah, I think I'm curious all your reaction to that, especially the buyer side. That's an interesting take on it. I think one of the questions I would have on that is, if the market is different, is it the same value? You know, if there's more inventory and it's become more of a buyer's market, you know, it's not as competitive out there. How does that change? How does that change the dynamic? Just in any way, does it change the dynamic?
Well, I guess my question is for our brokers too. It's like if Compass is going into their listing appointment saying, I've got a great plan. It's March 11th today, and I'm gonna spend the next 4 weeks doing an in-house exclusive. You keep getting your house ready, but if I can get you what number, then I sell it to somebody in my company. And if we don't have that by March 11th, then let's go on the market and broaden it. Right? So why aren't we doing that? Why is that in violation of clear cooperation? Is it in violation of all these new policies, or isn't it? Like, why wouldn't you do that if that's what our competition is doing?
So a question would be, there's a lot to this, by the way, and I would encourage you to invite someone from Bright MLS to come out and speak. We can easily help try to make that arrangement for you, because they can get into some of the details of the policy. I think from Bright's standpoint, they think that one of the most important things is to get the listing into the MLS. And from there, have the options available to you as an agent working with your client. to do what's best for them. So if the seller says, I want an office exclusive, I don't wanna put it on the internet, you know, I don't wanna share it throughout the MLS, we can do those things under the current rules. We're probably saying, put it in the MLS once you get that listing. What you do with it after that is up to you.
Sure, but the seller says, hey, if you can get me my number and I don't have to go to market, go for it. And if
So
you
would you
don't
be
get
okay
me my
putting
number,
it in the MLS without it being shared?
that's what you have to say to your seller.
Right.
Well,
With
if
that.
you're doing true in-office exclusive, the listing has to be entered into MLS, then you just activate exclusive.
Oh, okay.
And then it's not disseminated to the MLS.
Right,
Yes.
it's not-
That's where I think some of the confusion
I
and Brian has to
haven't done it
do.
yet, so-
It's all evolving, and I think Brian,
I talked to Dan yesterday about that, so.
Yeah.
Dan gave.
So that's how other firms are doing it. They're telling MLS they're doing an office exclusive. They do it for so much time. And then they go on the market if they haven't found a buyer under office.
Yeah, you can always change the status later from exclusive to active.
Active, okay.
our own brokerage is doing that, I'm not sure. I think that's what the intent is, if you're a subscriber to Brian MLS, that's what you should be doing.
Uh-huh,
Are they doing it? I think that's another question
uh-huh.
there. But if they are a subscriber, that's what you're supposed to do. Anyways, controversial.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
maybe that's-
yeah.
You don't feel like, so say if, cause I got a question from this rental client, like last week, she was like, do you think all these things going on with the government and layoffs, like, that the housing market, like, there's gonna be more inventory? Now, it's like, you know, I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like if there is any, even if like we do 6 months down the road, like, you know, an effect from what's going on, would the increase in inventory even, you know, make a difference compared to the influx in buyers, especially with like an increase in spring summer market, which are the busiest markets? Will we even notice a difference, or will you just notice an increase in home sales?
I think that's a great question.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's part of the variable. And you just, there's so much demand here that inventory can be a good thing for us. You can just maybe, you know, kind of level the market a little bit.
Yeah.
Cause I had some people ask me, they're like, oh, I think home prices are gonna go down, I was like, no. I wouldn't bet on that,
I mean,
just
I think
cause.
instead of 8 offers, you're gonna get 2 or 3.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's my.
But they're still gonna sell it, I don't think you're gonna have any price reductions, unless it's just not priced well or not marketed well. I think those are the only, like, I guess, effects of that. But especially in that area of like, cause people are thinking like closer to DC, so like Crystal City, Arlington area, but like people want to live there. The homes there are going quickly, especially townhomes, single families, so I think that they're just gonna sell.
Yeah. All right, we took took up an hour of your time. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
I plug one last tool.
Absolutely.
Escalation of them
Oh,
calculator, if you're not already using it, is incredible. Log in on NVAR to your member dashboard, and it's like the second thing scrolling at the top on the banner, or actually, I think it has a permanent spot now,
Yes.
with the escalation done tool. It makes it so much easier to calculate these different varying addenda, so I highly recommend.
Yes, nvar.com/calculator. You'll love it. That's what we're hearing.
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Very good.
James, good to meet
There
you.
might be an MLS question.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I heard you from the NVR spot.
When things close, we get
That's
to
when they had an
see
outkeeping in
the
the
sellers.
Yes, yeah, that was kind of my starting to
So
take
we'll
over.
see the
Good
sales
to see
price
you.
close that,
Tim, right?
see that there was some sellers.
Yeah, he's
some
there.
buyer.
Yeah, Matt, yes.
Okay.
Some people, I think, are filling in the broker compensation.
Did you work much out about
Some
it?
people are filling in.
Yeah.
an extra
We'll do that.
That's it.
And I know, it's like a first condo that's not selling, right? I called every buyer's agent who closed. And I just said, hey, I see